Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tea With Tayler. In this episode, I want to discuss the recent events of all the chaos, whether it be through Ukraine and Russia and oil prices, gas prices, inflation, all the chaos, that the responsibility is directed towards who knows what. It's changing every day. But it tends to never be that the people who are putting policies in place that have then created the results that we're seeing today, they're never held accountable. And I want to explain the cognitive dissonance from the policies that are put into place, the results that we see, and it's directly correlated to generations, for many generations now, many years, of alleviating personal responsibility and giving too much responsibility to the people in power, to government, but yet not holding them accountable for the results that are then that are the results of the policies that are implemented. One of them being inflation. Now we have people that are trying to blame inflation on Russia and Ukraine. Not to mention, 40% of the US dollar ever to exist was printed in the last 2 years. 40%. We know basic economics. When the more supply, the less scarcity, the price is adjusted accordingly. When something is in abundance, the cost goes down. When something is scarce, the cost goes up, depending on the demand. When they print that much of the dollar, it causes inflation. And inflation is a tax on the people who hold that dollar as a currency. If you are actually responsible and you are saving your money is worth less. And it is worth less directly because of the Congress, the US federal government, and the Federal Reserve. Don't let them put this shiny object of Ukraine and Russia to then alleviate the accountability that is on them, to alleviate them of being responsible for the policies that are directly correlated to that inflation. They need to be held accountable for printing that much money. They need to be held accountable for your money being worth less, while simultaneously they were also interjecting themselves in the economy in not allowing some businesses to operate, to deciding what businesses are essential and what businesses are not, causing a logistics crisis, causing a supply chain crisis, and then they wonder why there's a supply chain crisis. And then if you ask about it, they'll be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. So, I'm sorry, your couch won't get there on time. Your treadmill won't get there on time. As if these aren't people's businesses and livelihoods, and as if it doesn't have a domino effect on everything else. These are results from policies that were implemented by the US government. Don't let them avoid responsibility. And this is something that has been reoccurring for generations. Yet, the mindset of the people, I think it's starting to change. I'm hopeful it's starting to change. But we're to blame. We don't hold these people accountable. We are so easily distracted by slogans of free this, affordable housing. Let me ask you, is housing more affordable now that the government has injected themselves into the economy? Is it easier to buy a house for the masses, or is it more expensive? Are property evaluations at the highest as they have been in years? Are we living through another housing bubble that we did in 06 or 07? I think so. And who does that directly affect? It affects the middle and lower class. It's harder for you to buy a house right now because it's more expensive and competition is high. Simultaneously, it's harder to rent because rents are high, because that too has a domino effect on everything else. And it's directly correlated from the policies that are implemented. The cognitive dissonance to not look at LA and see that the policies that are implemented in LA are directly correlated and responsible for the homeless crisis, for the insane property evaluations, for the insane amount of, it's funny because this is like this is where they want to replicate all over the United States, where you have the biggest gap when it comes to the wealthy and to the poor. You literally have the wealthiest people on earth driving around Skid Row or near Skid Row, because they probably don't drive around it because they literally live in a different world, but then they want to tell you how to live your life. And it reminds me of a quote from Thomas Sowell where he emphasizes a lot that there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And as we become more impulsive as a society and more impatient, we tend not to conceptualize that there are no solutions. When politicians are selling you free this, affordable this, because it's going to win you votes, but it doesn't ultimately give you those results, maybe it's time to reflect on those policies and actually analyze the results, because it's not creating the results that they promised you. And they should be held accountable for that, and we should at the very least analyze them and then make adjustments. And this is something that's been happening year over year over year when we alleviate the personal responsibility of the individual and give all the power to the government and have central planning. The people that are in power are not smarter than the public writ large, and that's the beauty of federalism, and that's why the states are supposed to have the majority of the power and the federal government the least. But we don't even know many Americans don't even understand how America came to be, why the founding fathers created a government the way that it has, and we don't really know anything. We are so easily manipulated and persuaded by slogans. We don't actually, that's why there's such judgment when it comes to landlords and business owners and entrepreneurs, even though when they're raising rent, it's because there's more regulation and taxes that are policy that are put into fruition by people in government that are then passed down to the landlords and the business owners, that are then passed down to the renters and the customers. All of these regulations and these higher taxes are then passed down to those that are either buying or selling. It's a direct correlation. When there's more regulation, there's more red tape, it doesn't make it harder for rich people to do business. It makes it harder for your average American, for your lower class citizen to then start a business, to become financially free. Why do you think that is? Could it be they don't really want you to be financially free? They don't really want you to be independent, to own your own business, to operate it as you wish, to make as much money as you wish? Because if they did, you would have less regulation, you would have less red tape. But then they'll communicate it to you as it's for your benefit. It's gonna make things more affordable. But if you just analyze what's going on around it, if you were just aware, if you were just a conscious being, you would realize that is a lie. And so my challenge to all of you is to become more conscious, to be observant, to analyze what's going on, to see what they're saying, the policies that are being implemented, look at the results, and see if it makes sense. As Thomas Sowell says, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And we need to be able to have the intellectual standards and the ability to comprehend opportunity costs. Because that is life. There are costs and benefits to everything. We need to be able to analyze that and to vote accordingly, to be educated, because they cannot enslave an educated population. And that's why they don't teach us about history correctly. That's why they don't teach us about taxes or money. Because then if you don't know about it, that's why they don't teach about how our government works. They want us confused. Because then it's easy to manipulate people who don't know what's going on. They don't know about money, so then they're reliant on the government. They don't know how to manage their money. They don't know about taxes because our tax code is 74,000 pages long. Keep them ignorant. That's the goal. And so my challenge to you is to be educated, to question authority, to question the policies, to see what's being implemented and the results of it, and then to make the changes mentally, and to hold the people accountable, and to vote accordingly, and to be the change that you want to see. Support content creators, business owners, companies, products that support freedom, that support your values, because that's how we change the culture, and we are at a culture war, and it is time for the freedom and the responsibility to be brought back to the individuals, and to have individual sovereignty, and to embrace personal responsibility. And that's what I wanted to discuss in this episode of Tea with Tayler. Let me know what you think. I hope you found it valuable, and if you did, please please consider like, sharing, or subscribing. I always appreciate you guys joining me, and I hope to see you guys soon. God bless and take care.